Okay, so let's finish the problem we just started. So we have A1 is 2/5, R is 3/5. So if we just plug that in, we're going to have 2/5 in the front. I'm going to put 3/5 in parentheses to the n minus 1 power. That is my formula. Ta-da! And then if we want to find the 10th term, we've got to put 10 in the power. This one's a little screwy when we do it. So if I put it in, it'd be 10 minus 1, which means this is 2/5 to the 3/5 to the 9th. 2/5 times 3/5 to the 9th. If you type all of that into your calculator, it's going to give you something roughly 0.004. There is a way to make this into a fraction. And yeah, well, except that I don't think it worked. I'm going to try it again. Maybe these calculators are smarter. So if we, let me put my calculator up here for a second on the screen. If we put 2/5 in parentheses and then 3/5 to the 9th, and you type it in, it's going to tell you it's about this. And you can hit the math key and try to change it to a fraction. And on this one, it really didn't like it, and it's because the numbers are a little messed up. So what we can do instead is we can figure out the top number and the bottom number separately. So I can do 2 times 3 to the 9th. I'm just ignoring the 5s on the bottom. And that would be my top number, 39,366. And then I can do 5 times 5 to the 9th, or you can make it 5 to the 10th. And that would be the bottom number, so the top number and bottom number of my fraction. And this is why I didn't want to convert it. It just was a really crazy fraction. Put some commas on those. And so if you want to do a fraction that way, you can put in this top part and then the bottom part. Just don't forget to do the 9th power on both of those. But that's how you can get that number in fraction form. For most real life scenarios, the 0.004 is probably going to be more useful than the strange fraction. But it's the same number. Basically, this one's rounded off a little bit. All right, so let's take a look at another one. And I am not really sure why this happened, but the 3 that was supposed to be here moved down here. So I'm going to write it up here because that bothers me. I should get some white out to get rid of that too. We'll do that later. Okay, so this is a little different because they've told us what the ratio is, and they've told us what the 12th term is, but they still want us to write the formula and find the 10th term. So there's a couple of ways to do this. You could work backwards from the 12th term, but since that's a fraction, that may not be, you could divide by 3, divide by 3, divide by 3. It would end up being kind of weird with the fraction, though. If it was a bigger number, but I mean, dividing by 3 11 times to get back to it's going to be kind of a pain. So we can do kind of what we did with arithmetic sequences and put the numbers into a formula and solve for that first term. So our generic formula is an equals a1 times r to the n minus 1 power. What we're going to do is we're going to put in this information right here. So the 2/3 is going to go in for the answer. And we don't know what the first term is. That's what we're trying to figure out. We do know what r is. So I know that it's going to be 3. And I know what term I'm on. The 12 right here, that's my n. So I'm going to put in 12 minus 1. Are you guys okay if I just write that as an 11?
Yeah.
Okay. So, or maybe for the people watching this, they're going to be like, what? Wait a minute, where'd 12 come from? I'll go ahead and rewrite it. I get paid to do this. So we put in the 12. 12 minus 1 is 11. And so if you figure out what this number is, it won't be that hard to find the first term. So if I do 3 to the 11th on my calculator, I get 177,147. And then I have to divide 2/3 by that number, which is a little exciting. Is this why calculators were invented? So on the calculator, we will take and put 2/3 in parentheses and then divide by that big number, 177, 147. And you get this crazy scientific notation, but let's see if we can change it to a fraction. Hit the math key and just select the first thing, which is frac, and it's not going to change it. So what we can do is, I'm trying to think, let's just work with this a little bit, but let's change it to a decimal. It's going to be a crazy problem. So it's, if I were to move the decimal over 6 places, because that's what it's telling us, scientific notation, I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros, and then 3, 7, 6. I'm just going to do a couple actual significant digits there. And so this is approximately equal to my first term. And we could go in and make this into a crazy fraction if we wanted to. But we'll just work with decimals on this one just to kind of have that going. And so our formula for AN would be 0.00000376 times 3 to the n minus 1. I didn't start far enough over. I'm going to write in the margins a little bit here. That's an n minus 1 power there, by the way. It's very neat, very neat. And then we can find the 10th term by putting 10 in, so I'll have 0.00000376 times 3 to the 10 minus 1 power, which would make that the 9th power when you go to type it in. And you could actually use that number that was saved on your calculator, and then you wouldn't have this rounded off so much. I'm going to do that. You guys still have that number on there? So this number that's on here, if you just hit times, it'll copy your answer. And then we'll do 3 to the 9th. And it comes out at 0.074074. Let's see if it'll change it to a fraction. Math, frac. Look at that, it's 2/7. So we could use the decimal, we can use this, and so that 10th term came out 2/7, which, or 2/27. This is where fractions are nicer than decimals, because I really didn't want to write. I mean, you could also do, it's 0.074 repeating. You could do that too. Okay, we did that. That was kind of exciting. The next one has whole numbers. I think the rest of them have whole numbers, so I got those fractions out of the way early. All right, so let's take a look at this one. So this one says find A1 and R. So it's a little bit different directions. They've given us the 4th term and they've given us the 8th term. And so we can use a process to find R pretty quickly. So if I subtract the 8 and the 4, basically that means that we are transitioning over 4 terms in the sequence. We went from 4 to 8. That's a difference of 4. And I can use that as my power of R. You would multiply by whatever R is 4 times. So 8 minus 4 is what I'm doing there. And that would be equal to this number divided by this number. What we're essentially trying to do is figure out what are they multiplying by every time. And so if I were to take that R value and multiply it by itself 4 times, I would get this number. And if we divide that, we get 625. And then if you want to figure out what R is, we want to do the 4th root on both sides, which we don't do super often. So let me go through that a little bit. I'll zoom out, put my calculator up here. And so if I want to do a 4th power, I'm going to type I think I typed the 4 first, and then you're going to hit the math key, and you're going to select number 5, and you're going to put the 625 in. I'm recording right now, so can you come back in a little bit? Okay. And so if we do that on these calculators, we get this nice thing that looks like the 4th root of 625, and we hit enter and we get 5. So R is 5. So that was the first answer they were looking for. R is 5. And then to find the first term, we're going to use that trick where we plug in one of these like it's a point. Huh? The smaller one, I agree. Megan thinks we should do the smaller one, the 250. I think that would be less writing, so I'm all up for that. So remember that your formula is AN equals A1 times R to the n minus 1 power. So let's use the 4 and the 250. So the 250 goes here. A1 is what we're looking for. We just found out that R is 5. And then it is the 4th term, so we're going to use 4 minus 1 up there in the power. So it'd be 250 equals A1 times 5 to the 3rd power. And 5 to the 3rd power is 5 times 5 times 5. That is 125. And so we can solve for A1 just by dividing by 125. And we get 2 for the first term. And then if they asked us to go ahead and write the formula completely out, we would have all the information that we need. But they don't ask for it, so we don't have to. Okay, so moving along. If we look at the next one, I'm going to zoom back in a little bit. The first thing you want to find is R. So you take R and you're going to take the 6 and the 3 from the terms, and that's going to be your power is 6 minus 3. And that will equal the 6th term divided by the 3rd term, 160 over 20. So this would be R to the 3rd equals 8. And you can do a cubed root on your calculator. That's in the math menu, by the way. It's one of the first things you'll see, cubed root of 8. And you get 2. Or you can know that 2 times 2 times 2 is 8, which is also helpful. So that's R. And then I'm going to set up my formula to find the first term. We'll just work backwards. I don't like that there. I'm going to move it over. So AN equals A1 times R to the n minus 1 power. So let's use the smaller numbers. I agree with Megan. I like to write fewer digits. So the 20 goes in on this side of the equation. A1 is what we're looking for, so we're just going to call that A1. We just found out that R is 2. And then 20 was the 3rd term, so I put 3 minus 1 up there, which means that that power is going to be 2. 2 squared. I think we can do that math. So A1 times 4. So we divide by 4 to find out what A1 is. We end up with 5. And then you could write the formula and get any term that you wanted. Once you have the first term in R, you can do pretty much anything with these. Okay, so the same basic setup for the last couple of slides, except that we're looking for different things. Instead of saying find A1, it says find AN, which means write the formula. So we're just going to add that extra step at the end where you write the formula. Oh, and they want us to find the 10th term. So I guess there's a couple extra steps. But you start it just like we did the last 2 examples. We're just taking it a little further. So you have to find R first. So R to the 5 minus 2 power, because the 5th term and the 2nd term, is 512 divided by 8. So I'm going to have R to the 3rd equals 64. You're going to cube root that. Again, on your calculator, that is the math button. You hit the math button and you can get the cubed root. Type in the 64. And we get R equals 4. So that's the first piece that we need. Then we need to know what the first term is. So we'll set up our formula AN equals A1 times R to the n minus 1 power. And let's use the 2 and the 8 again. We'll use the small numbers. So put in 8 equals A1. We know that R is 4. And we know that 8 was the 2nd term, so 2 minus 1. So 8 equals A1 times 4 to the 1st. So that's just going to be 4. So 8 equals A1 times 4. So if we divide by 4, we can figure out, oh, that first term must have been 2. So then if we want to write the formula, we can just put all of this in. an equals 2 times 4 to the n minus 1 power. That's the an formula that it asks for in the beginning. And then if it wants the 10th term, we can just put in 10. So a10 equals 2 times 4th to 10 minus 1, which I would just type in 2 times 4th to the 9th. And if you do that on your calculator, it is 524,288. Last box. These just take a little while. It's not that it's super tough, it's just a little bit of time consuming, keeping track of things, writing stuff down. Okay, so you guys talk me through this. What do I need to do first? R. Good, we're going to find R. What do I do with R? 5 minus 3 power. Good job. Equals?
648 over 72.
Good, 648 over 72. You rock. R, so that'd be R squared equals, if we divide that, we get 9. I'll bet you know what squared equals 9.
It's 3.
It's 3. And theoretically it could be negative 3, but since my numbers are getting bigger and not becoming negative, I'm going to assume that it is just going to be positive 3. So R is 3. Okay, now what do we do?
You gotta put it in the equation.
Put it in the equation, good. So an equals a1, r, n minus 1. So what goes here? 72 if we're using that first one. A1 just stays A1. What goes here? 3. And then what goes up here? 3 minus 1. Good. So I have 72 equals A1 times 3 to the second, which would just be 9. So this is A1, the first term, times 9. So divide by 9, and we know that 8 is A1. So we can write our formula now. An equals 8 times 3 to the n minus 1 power. And then if we want to find the 10th term, which is in the directions, we just put the 10 minus 1 into the power, so it'd be 8 times 3 to the 9th power, which we can type in and get 157,464.